thought I knew what loneliness felt like after 20 years of marriage to a man who barely looked at me anymore. But nothing prepared me for the night David walked into that charity gala, and everything I believed about my life shattered into 1,000 pieces. My husband Richard was across the room, laughing with his colleagues, oblivious as always. And there I was at 62, feeling invisible in my expensive dress, when this silver-haired stranger with kind eyes asked me to dance, and suddenly I forgot how to breathe. What happened next changed everything, and I mean everything, because the secret I've been carrying for the past 2 years is finally eating me alive, and I don't know how much longer I can keep pretending that my perfect life isn't built on lies. My name is Catherine, and this is the story of how I destroyed my family, or maybe how I finally found myself. I honestly don't know anymore. Before I go any further, I need to ask you something. If you're listening to this, and you've ever felt trapped in your own life, if you've ever wondered if there's more out there than just existing, please click that subscribe button. This channel is trying to reach 1,000 subscribers, and sharing these real stories helps more people than you might think. Your support means everything, and it only takes one click on that subscribe button to be part of this community. So let me take you back to where it all started. Boston, Massachusetts, October 2022. The weather was starting to turn cold. That particular kind of autumn chill that seeps into your bones and makes you want to curl up with a blanket and tea. But there I was, standing in front of my mirror, trying to convince myself that the woman staring back at me was still worth looking at. 20 years of marriage, 2 grown children, a beautiful home in Beacon Hill, and a husband who was more interested in his law firm than in me. That was my life, perfectly respectable, completely hollow. Richard and I had stopped really talking years ago. I don't even know when it happened exactly. It was like watching a plant die slowly. You don't notice it day by day, but suddenly you look up and realize everything is brown and withered. We still went through the motions, attended social events together, had dinner at the same table, slept in the same bed. But we were strangers sharing a space, nothing more. I had tried so many times to reconnect with him, suggested counseling, planned romantic dinners, bought lingerie that stayed in the drawer with the tags still on. Nothing worked. He was married to his career, and I was just the accessory he brought to firm events. The night of the Children's Hospital Charity Gala, I almost didn't go. I was tired of putting on my society wife mask, tired of making small talk with people who looked through me like I was wallpaper. But Richard insisted we needed to attend. Something about important clients being there. So I put on my navy blue evening gown, the one that used to make Richard's eyes light up but now barely earned a grunt. Did my hair and makeup with more care than I'd bothered with in months, and climbed into our Mercedes for the silent drive downtown. The grand hall at the Four Seasons was decorated beautifully, all soft lighting and autumn flowers, the kind of elegant setup that costs more than most people make in a month. Richard disappeared within minutes of our arrival, drawn like a magnet to a group of senior partners near the bar. I stood there alone, clutching my champagne glass like a lifeline, watching couples dance and laugh and actually seem to enjoy each other's company. That's when I saw him for the first time. David. He was standing by the windows overlooking the Boston Common, alone like me, with this expression on his face that I recognized immediately because I saw it in my own mirror every morning. Loneliness. Deep, aching loneliness that no amount of money or success could fill. He must have felt me looking because he turned and our eyes met across the room. I should have looked away. That would have been the proper thing to do. The safe thing. But I didn't. Instead, I found myself walking toward him, my feet moving before my brain could stop them. Up close, he was even more striking than I'd thought. Tall, probably 6'2", with silver hair that was still thick and wavy, laugh lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled often, and this presence about him that was both gentle and magnetic. He looked to be a few years older than me, maybe 64 or 65, wearing his tuxedo with the kind of ease that came from years of attending these events. Beautiful view, I said, because I needed to say something and my brain had apparently forgotten how to form intelligent sentences. He smiled, and I felt something flutter in my chest that I thought had died years ago. The common is lovely this time of year, he replied, his voice deep and warm like good whiskey. Though I have to say, the view just improved considerably. I actually blushed. At 62 years old, I blush like a teenager. That's very kind of you to say, I managed. I'm Catherine. David, he said, extending his hand. When our hands touched, I felt it. This electric current. The sense of connection that was so powerful, it actually scared me. His hand was warm and strong, and he held mine just a fraction of a second longer than necessary. Are you here with someone? He asked, and I hesitated before answering. My husband, I finally said. He's somewhere in here talking about mergers and acquisitions. David nodded knowingly. My wife passed away 3 years ago. Cancer. I keep coming to these things because sitting alone in my house feels worse than standing alone in a crowded room. The honesty of his words hit me hard. Here was someone who understood, really understood, what it felt like to be lonely, even when surrounded by people. We started talking, really talking, in a way I hadn't talked to anyone in years. He told me about his wife Margaret, how they'd been married for 38 years, how he still found himself setting 2 places at the dinner table sometimes. I told him about my children, Emma, who was teaching English in Japan and barely called, and Marcus, who was so focused on his startup company that I'd become just another item on his to-do list. We didn't talk about Richard much. What was there to say? That my husband barely remembered I existed except when he needed a +1 for events like this. If you're still with me, listening to this messy confession, I want to ask you something. Please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. This channel is working toward 1,000 subscribers, and every single one matters. Sharing these real experiences, these honest stories about the complicated messiness of life, that's what this community is about. So please, take 1 second and click subscribe. It really does make a difference. David asked me to dance. The band was playing something slow and romantic, and I couldn't remember the last time Richard had danced with me. I should have said no. I should have made an excuse and gone to find my husband. Instead, I said yes. His hand on my waist felt like coming home. We moved together like we'd been dancing together for years, and when he pulled me closer, I didn't resist. We talked more as we danced, our conversation flowing easily from topic to topic. He was a retired architect, had spent his career designing buildings all over New England. He showed me pictures on his phone of structures he'd created, his face lighting up as he explained the thought process behind each design. I found myself genuinely interested, asking questions, laughing at his stories about difficult clients and impossible deadlines. You have a beautiful laugh, he said at one point, and I realized I couldn't remember the last time someone had said something like that to me. Richard used to compliment me, back in the beginning when we were young and everything felt possible. But somewhere along the way, I'd become invisible to him. Just part of the furniture of his successful life. With David, I felt seen. Really, truly seen in a way I hadn't felt in decades. We danced 3 songs, which turned into 5, which turned into me losing track of time completely. I was aware of people watching us, aware that this probably looked inappropriate, a married woman dancing repeatedly with a man who wasn't her husband. But in that moment, I didn't care. For the first time in 20 years, I felt alive. Eventually, Richard found me. He walked up with barely controlled irritation, his jaw tight in that way it got when he was trying not to make a scene in public. Catherine, we're leaving, he announced, not even acknowledging David's presence. I have an early meeting tomorrow. I wanted to argue, wanted to tell him that for once I was enjoying myself at one of these events, and couldn't he just give me one night? But old habits die hard. I smiled apologetically at David, thanked him for the lovely conversation, and followed my husband out like an obedient child. In the car, Richard lectured me about appearances and appropriate behavior, and how it looked for his wife to spend an entire evening dancing with a stranger. I sat there in silence, feeling the weight of my life settling back onto my shoulders like a heavy coat. That should have been the end of it. One lovely evening, a brief respite from my lonely existence, a memory to tuck away and take out on bad days. But it wasn't the end. Because the next morning I found a note slipped under my windshield wiper when I went out to get the newspaper. It was from David. He'd somehow figured out which car was mine, probably asked one of the valets. The note was simple, just his phone number and a message that said, "I haven't enjoyed an evening that much in years. If you ever want to talk, really talk, I'd love to hear from you. No pressure, no expectations, just friendship." I stood there in my driveway holding that piece of paper like it was made of gold, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. I told myself I wouldn't call him. What would be the point? I was married, he was lonely. It would be a mistake, a complication I didn't need in my carefully ordered life. But 3 days later, after Richard canceled our dinner plans for the 4th time that month to work late at the office, after I'd eaten leftover pasta alone in our kitchen, with only the sound of the refrigerator for company, I found myself dialing David's number. He answered on the second ring, and the moment I heard his voice, I knew I was in trouble. We talked for 2 hours that first night, about everything and nothing. Our childhoods, our disappointments, our dreams that had gotten lost along the way. He made me laugh until my sides hurt. He listened, really listened, to everything I said. And when we finally hung up, I felt lighter than I had in years. It became a routine. I'd call him in the evenings when Richard was working late, which was most evenings. Sometimes we'd talk for hours, sometimes just for a few minutes. We met for coffee a few times, innocent meetings at Starbucks where we'd sit and talk, until they started stacking chairs around us. We went for walks along the Charles River, wrapped in coats and scarves, watching the runners and the rowers and the changing seasons. We went to museums, to bookstores, to little cafes in neighborhoods I'd never explored. He showed me Boston through his eyes, pointing out architectural details I'd never noticed, telling me stories about buildings he'd designed and buildings he wished he had. I was falling in love with him. There's no other way to say it. At 62 years old, after 20 years of a dead marriage, I was falling head over heels in love like a teenager with her first crush. And the terrifying, exhilarating, impossible truth was that he was falling in love with me too. I could see it in the way he looked at me, in the way his face lit up when I walked into a room, in the way he'd reach for my hand without thinking, and then pull back, remembering that I wore another man's ring. Please, if you're finding this story resonating with you, if you know what it's like to feel torn between duty and desire, between what you should do and what your heart is screaming for you to do, click that subscribe button. Help this channel reach 1,000 subscribers. These stories matter. Your support matters. And it takes just one click to be part of this community. 4 months into our friendship, if you can call it that, David kissed me. We were in his car after spending the afternoon at the Museum of Fine Arts, parked outside my house. Richard was in New York for a conference and wouldn't be back until the next day. It had started snowing, big fat flakes that made everything look magical and clean. We'd been sitting there talking about a painting we'd seen, some impressionist piece about a woman looking out a window, and suddenly David reached over and touched my face. "You're so beautiful, Catherine," he whispered. "So beautiful and so sad, and I just want to make you smile." And then he kissed me. I should have stopped him, should have pulled away, reminded him that I was married, that this was wrong. But I didn't. Instead, I kissed him back with 20 years of pent-up loneliness and desire and need. When we finally broke apart, we were both crying. "I'm sorry," he said. "I shouldn't have done that." "Don't apologize," I told him. "Please don't apologize for making me feel something again." We sat there in his car while the snow fell around us, holding hands like teenagers, knowing that everything had just changed, and we could never go back to innocent friendship again. That night, I lay awake in my bed, the bed I shared with Richard, and I felt like the worst person in the world. But I also felt alive. For the first time in 2 decades, I felt like a real human being with real feelings and real desires. I was stuck between guilt and joy, between what I knew was right and what felt right, and I had no idea what to do. I thought about ending it with David, about sending him a message saying we couldn't see each other anymore. But the thought of going back to my hollow existence, of losing the one person who made me feel seen and valued and alive, that was unbearable. So I didn't end it. Instead, I fell deeper. David and I started meeting more often. We'd go to his house sometimes, a beautiful colonial in Cambridge that he'd designed himself. We'd sit in his living room and talk for hours, drink wine, listen to music. He'd cook dinner for me, simple meals that tasted like heaven because they were made with care and attention and love. Real love, not the hollow companionship that Richard and I called a marriage, but we didn't sleep together. Not then. We'd kiss sometimes, heated kisses that left us both breathless and aching. But David always stopped before things went too far. "When you come to my bed," he told me one night as we sat on his couch, my lipstick smeared across both our mouths, "I want it to be because you've chosen me, not because you're running from him. I want it to be a beginning, not a mistake." I loved him even more for that, for respecting me enough to make me face the decision I was avoiding, because that's what it was, wasn't it? A decision. Stay with Richard, with my comfortable life and my big house and my social standing and my slowly dying soul. Or choose David, choose love and passion, and the risk of destroying everything I'd built over the past 20 years. My children would be devastated. My friends would judge me. I'd become that woman, the one who left her successful husband for another man. The homewrecker, even though my home had been wrecked long before David walked into my life. The decision was made for me in March. Richard and I had barely spoken in weeks. We existed in our house like ghosts haunting the same space, passing each other in hallways, sleeping on opposite sides of our king-size bed, with miles of emotional distance between us. One Saturday morning, he came into the kitchen where I was reading the newspaper and drinking coffee. "I need to talk to you," he said, and something in his tone made my stomach drop. He sat down across from me, and I noticed he looked tired, older than his 64 years. "I've been offered a position," he said. "Senior partner, overseeing the new office in Singapore. It's a 2-year commitment, maybe longer." I stared at him, waiting for the part where he asked me if I wanted to go with him. It never came. "I'm leaving in 6 weeks," he continued. "I think it would be best if you stayed here. You have your life, your routine. I'll come back for holidays, we can video chat, it'll be fine." Fine. He thought it would be fine to just abandon our marriage, such as it was, and move halfway around the world. In that moment, I realized that he knew. Maybe not about David specifically, but he knew that our marriage was over. He'd known for years, probably. We'd both been going through the motions, too scared or too comfortable or too proud to admit that what we had was already dead. If you're still listening, if this story is hitting close to home, please take a moment to hit subscribe. This channel needs your support to reach 1,000 subscribers, and these real, raw stories about complicated relationships and difficult choices, they matter. Your subscription matters. It's just one click, and it helps this community grow. "What are you saying, Richard?" I asked him, even though I knew. I just needed to hear him say it. He sighed, ran his hand through his thinning hair. I'm saying that maybe this is an opportunity for both of us to figure out what we really want. I'll keep paying all the bills. The house is in both our names. You'll be financially secure. But Catherine, let's be honest. We haven't had a real marriage in years. I don't know when we lost each other, but we did. And I think we both know it's too late to find our way back. He was right. I knew he was right. But hearing him say it out loud, acknowledging that our marriage was over, it still hurt. Not because I was in love with him anymore. I wasn't sure I had been in years. But because of what it represented. The death of dreams. The failure of promises we'd made when we were young and naive and thought love was enough to sustain a lifetime. I've been seeing someone, I said quietly, surprising myself with my honesty. Richard nodded slowly. I know, he said. I've known for a while. The late-night phone calls, the way you smile at your phone sometimes, the nights you're not home when I call. I'm not blind, Catherine. Why didn't you say anything? I asked. He shrugged. What was there to say? We both knew what was happening. Maybe I was relieved, honestly. That you found something that made you happy. God knows I haven't been able to do that for you in a long time. We sat there in our kitchen, two people who'd spent 20 years together, acknowledging the end of everything we'd built. It was sad, and it was freeing, and it was terrifying all at once. So what do we do? I asked. I'll talk to my lawyer, Richard said. We'll file for divorce, make it as clean and painless as possible. We can tell the kids together if you want, or separately, whatever you prefer. I called David as soon as Richard left for his office. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial the number. He's leaving, I told him when he answered. Richard is moving to Singapore and we're getting divorced. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then David said, How do you feel? I don't know, I admitted. Scared, relieved, guilty. Like my life just turned upside down and I don't know which way is up anymore. Come over, David said gently. Let me hold you. Let me be there for you. So I went to him. I drove to his house in Cambridge, and when he opened the door, I fell into his arms and cried. He held me while I sobbed out 20 years of disappointment and loneliness and failure. He didn't try to fix it or tell me everything would be okay. He just held me and let me feel what I needed to feel. That night, I finally went to his bed. Not because I was running from Richard or from my life, but because I was choosing David. Choosing love, choosing passion, choosing to be seen and valued and cherished. At 62 years old, I discovered that my body could still feel pleasure, that I could still desire and be desired. David touched me like I was precious, like every inch of my aging skin was beautiful. We made love slowly, tenderly, and I cried the whole time. Not from sadness, but from the overwhelming feeling of finally being connected to another human being in a real and meaningful way. Telling my children was the hardest part. Emma flew back from Japan, furious with both me and Richard for what she saw as our selfishness. You're just giving up? She yelled at us over dinner at a restaurant she'd chosen, neutral territory for our family implosion. After 20 years, you're just walking away? Em, it's more complicated than that, I tried to explain. It's really not, she snapped. You made vows, for better or worse. You don't just quit because things get hard. Marcus was quieter but equally disapproving. Is there someone else? He asked me, his eyes boring into mine like he could see through to my soul. For both of you? Richard and I exchanged glances. Yes, I admitted. For me, yes. There's someone I've been seeing. Unbelievable, Emma muttered. So you're a cheater and a quitter. Her words cut deep because part of me agreed with her. I was a cheater. I had betrayed my vows, had fallen in love with another man while I was still married. It didn't matter that my marriage had been dead for years, that Richard and I had been living like roommates rather than spouses. I had still crossed a line, still done something that society said was wrong. But I also knew that if I had stayed in that marriage, if I had kept pretending and going through the motions, something inside me would have died completely. I would have become a shell, empty and bitter and full of regrets. At least this way, I had a chance at real happiness, even if it came at a tremendous cost. The divorce took 6 months to finalize. Richard was surprisingly generous, letting me keep the house, splitting our assets fairly down the middle. I think he felt guilty, in his own way, for checking out of our marriage years before I did. Or maybe he was just ready to move on and didn't want the hassle of a drawn-out legal battle. Either way, by September, I was officially single for the first time in 22 years. It was strange signing those papers, watching our marriage reduced to legal documents and financial settlements. 2 decades of shared history, gone with a judge's signature. David was patient through all of it. He never pressured me, never asked me to make promises about our future. He just loved me, steadily and reliably, through the chaos of my life falling apart and rebuilding. When I had bad days, when the guilt and the grief overwhelmed me, he'd hold me and remind me that it was okay to feel complicated emotions about complicated situations. When I had good days, when I felt light and free and excited about the future, he'd celebrate with me. His joy in my happiness so pure and genuine it made me love him even more. Before I continue with what happened next, I want to pause and ask you something. If this story is resonating with you, if you understand the complexity of choosing yourself over what's expected of you, please click that subscribe button. This channel is working toward 1,000 subscribers, and every single one helps. These real stories about real people making difficult choices, they matter. Your support matters. Please, take just 1 second to hit subscribe. My relationship with my children slowly started to heal, though it took time. Emma came around first, surprisingly. She called me one night, about 3 months after the divorce was final. "I talked to Dad," she said. "He told me it wasn't all your fault, that you guys had been struggling for years." "We both made mistakes," I told her. "Our marriage failed because we both let it fail. I'm not blameless, but neither is your father." "I'm still hurt," Emma admitted, "and I'm still processing all of this. But I don't want to lose my mom over it. Can we try to work through this?" I cried, talking to her that night. My fierce, independent daughter, who I'd been so afraid of losing forever, she was giving me a chance. Marcus took longer. He's more like Richard, pragmatic and logical, viewing the world in black and white terms. But eventually, he agreed to meet David. David and I had been together for over a year at that point. We'd taken things slow after the divorce, wanting to build a foundation that wasn't based on secrets and stolen moments. He'd introduced me to his daughters, 2 women in their 30s who'd been understandably protective of their widowed father. They'd welcomed me cautiously, watching to see if I would hurt him, gradually warming up as they saw how happy we made each other. Meeting Marcus was different. This was my son, my baby who I'd raised and loved, and who now looked at me like I was a stranger he wasn't sure he could trust. We met at a coffee shop in Cambridge, neutral territory again. Marcus was stiff and formal, shaking David's hand like they were business associates rather than 2 men connected through their love for me. But David, with his natural warmth and genuine kindness, slowly drew Marcus out. They talked about architecture and design. Marcus's startup was developing software for construction companies, and I watched my son's rigid posture gradually relax. By the end of the meeting, they weren't best friends, but there was a tentative respect between them. "He seems like a good man," Marcus told me as we walked to our cars. "He is," I assured him. "He's very good to me." Marcus nodded slowly. "I'm glad, Mom. I'm still working through my feelings about everything that happened, but I'm glad you're happy." Life settled into a new rhythm. David and I split our time between his house and mine, talking about eventually selling one and combining households, but not rushing it. We traveled together, taking trips to places I'd always wanted to visit but Richard had never been interested in. We went to Paris, and David showed me the buildings that had inspired him when he was a young architect. We went to the Grand Canyon and hiked along the rim at sunset, the sky exploding in colors that took my breath away. We went to small towns in Vermont and stayed at bed and breakfasts, walking through autumn leaves and holding hands like newlyweds. The physical relationship between us continued to be a revelation. I'd thought that part of my life was over, that at 62, I was past the age of passion and desire. David proved me wrong over and over again. He loved my body, every wrinkle and sag and imperfection that I'd spent years being self-conscious about. He made me feel beautiful and sexy, and wanted in a way I'd never experienced. Not even in my youth. We'd make love, and then lie tangled together talking for hours, sharing our histories and our hopes and our fears. It was everything a relationship should be, and everything mine with Richard had never been. But here's where the story gets complicated. More complicated than it already was. Because life is never simple, and happiness is never without cost. This past May, I got a call from Richard. He was back in Boston for a few days, staying at a hotel downtown, and wanted to meet me for coffee. I almost said no. What was there left to say? We'd said it all during the divorce, signed all the papers, divided all the assets. But something in his voice made me agree. We met at the same Starbucks where David and I had first started meeting all those months ago. The irony not lost on me. Richard looked different. Older, yes. The Singapore posting had taken its toll. But also softer somehow, less rigid and controlled. We made small talk for a few minutes, dancing around whatever he'd really asked me there to say. Finally, he put down his coffee cup and looked at me directly. "I made a mistake," he said. "Moving to Singapore, letting you go, all of it. I made a terrible mistake." My heart sank. "Richard, don't." "I need to say this," he continued. "I've spent the past year alone in a city where I don't know anyone, working ridiculous hours because there's nothing else to do, and I finally realized what I lost. I lost you, Catherine. I lost the best thing that ever happened to me because I was too stupid and too focused on my career to see what was right in front of me. I sat there listening to him, feeling a confusing mix of emotions. Anger, because where was this realization 20 years ago? Sadness, because it was too late, way too late. And underneath it all, a small, petty satisfaction that he finally understood what he'd thrown away. "I want to try again," Richard said. "I'm coming back to Boston permanently. I've already put in for the transfer. I want us to try to rebuild what we had. I know it won't be easy, and I know I don't deserve another chance, but I'm asking anyway. Can we try again? Please." If you're on the edge of your seat wondering what happened next, hit that subscribe button. This channel needs your support to reach 1,000 subscribers, and these stories about real people facing impossible choices, they need to be heard. Your subscription helps this community grow. Please click subscribe. I looked at my ex-husband, this man I'd spent 20 years of my life with, and I felt something I never expected to feel. Pity. Because I understood now what he was going through. The loneliness, the realization that success and career achievements meant nothing without someone to share them with. I'd lived that for years before David came into my life, but I also knew that whatever Richard and I had once had, it was truly gone. You can't resurrect something that's been dead that long. "I'm with David," I told him gently. "I'm in love with him, Richard. Real love, the kind where you actually talk to each other and support each other and want to be together. I'm sorry if that hurts you, but I can't go back. I won't go back." Richard's face crumpled, and for the first time in all the years I'd known him, I saw him cry. "I was a terrible husband to you," he said through his tears. "I know that. I took you for granted and ignored you and let our marriage die. But Catherine, we had 20 good years before it went bad. Doesn't that count for something? It counts for everything, I assured him. Those years shaped me, gave me our children, taught me things I needed to learn. But Richard, they're over. We're different people now. We want different things. And I found something with David that I never had with you, even in the good years. I found a partnership, a real partnership, where both people show up every day and choose each other. We talked for another hour. I told him about David, about how we met, about what our relationship was like. Richard listened, really listened, maybe for the first time in our entire marriage. When we finally parted, we hugged, and it felt like a real goodbye. Not the cold, formal separation we'd had during the divorce, but a genuine ending with love and respect and acknowledgement of what we'd meant to each other. I went home to David that night and told him about the meeting. "Are you okay?" he asked, pulling me close. "I'm better than okay," I told him. "I'm sure. For the first time since all of this started, I'm completely, totally sure that I made the right choice." But that wasn't the end of the complications, because 2 weeks later, I found out I was sick. A routine mammogram, the kind I'd been getting for years, showed something suspicious. More tests, a biopsy, and suddenly I was sitting in an oncologist's office hearing the word cancer. Breast cancer, stage 2, treatable but requiring surgery and chemotherapy and radiation. I was 64 years old, newly in love, finally happy after years of misery, and my body was betraying me. The first person I told was David. I sat him down in his living room, the same room where we'd spent so many hours talking and laughing and falling in love, and I told him I had cancer. He went pale, absolutely white, and for a moment I saw the fear in his eyes. He'd lost his first wife to cancer. Now the woman he loved was facing the same diagnosis. "I understand if this is too much," I told him. "If you need to step back, protect yourself. I won't blame you." He looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "Are you insane?" he said. "You think I'm going anywhere?" "Catherine, I love you. That doesn't change because you're sick. If anything, it makes me more certain that I need to be here, with you, helping you fight this." And he was. Through every doctor's appointment, every treatment, every bad day when the chemo made me so sick I couldn't get out of bed. He held my hand through the surgery, sitting in the waiting room for 6 hours until they could tell him I was okay. He shaved my head when my hair started falling out, then shaved his own head in solidarity. He learned to cook the bland foods that were all I could tolerate when the nausea was bad. He held me when I cried from fear and frustration and the unfairness of finally finding happiness only to have it threatened by disease. My children rallied too. Emma came home from Japan for a month, taking unpaid leave from her teaching job to help care for me. Marcus called every day, sometimes multiple times a day, to check on me. Even Richard reached out, sending flowers to the hospital after my surgery with a card that said simply, "You've always been stronger than you know. You'll beat this." The cancer, in its own terrible way, brought my fractured family back together. Not as we'd been before. That was impossible. But as something new. Something honest. We were people who'd hurt each other, disappointed each other, but still loved each other in our imperfect ways. If you've stayed with me through this whole complicated, messy story, I need to ask you one more time. Please hit that subscribe button. This channel is so close to reaching 1,000 subscribers, and these real stories about real struggles and real love need to be heard. Your subscription matters. Please click subscribe right now. The treatment was brutal. 6 months of chemotherapy that left me weak and sick, and wondering if the cure was worse than the disease. But I had David. I had my children. I had a reason to fight, a future worth fighting for. And slowly, gradually, the treatment started working. The tumor shrank, then disappeared. The cancer markers in my blood dropped to normal levels. My hair started growing back, coming in silver and curly instead of the straight brown it had been, making me look like a completely different person. Maybe I was a completely different person. The Catherine who'd stood at that charity gala 2 years ago, invisible and lonely and desperately unhappy, she was gone. In her place was this woman, scarred and battered but alive and loved and grateful for every single day. I finished my last radiation treatment in August. David took me out to dinner that night. Nothing fancy, just our favorite Italian place in the North End. We ate pasta and drank wine and celebrated being on the other side of the nightmare. "I have something to ask you," David said as we were finishing dessert. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box, and my heart stopped. "I know we're old," he said with a smile. "I know we've both been married before. I know neither of us needs a piece of paper to prove we love each other. But Catherine, I want to marry you. I want to stand up in front of everyone and say that you're mine and I'm yours. I want whatever time we have left to be official and public and celebrated. Will you marry me?" I looked at this man who'd saved my life in every way a person can be saved, who'd loved me through my divorce and my guilt and my cancer, who made me laugh every day and held me every night and showed me that it was never too late for real love. "Yes," I told him. "Yes, absolutely yes." We were married last month, a small ceremony in his backyard, with just our children and his daughters and a few close friends. Emma walked me down the aisle, tears streaming down her face. Marcus stood up as David's best man, the two of them having grown close during my illness. I wore a simple cream dress and a flower crown, and I felt more beautiful at 64 than I ever had at 24. Richard sent a gift, a beautiful set of crystal wine glasses with a note that said, "Wishing you both all the happiness I failed to give you. You deserve this." It was gracious and kind, and I appreciated it more than he probably knew. The ceremony was short and sweet, no big production. Just two people who'd found each other later in life promising to love each other for whatever time remained. We're in a good place now, David and I. We sold my house in Beacon Hill. Too many memories of my old life there. And we're living in his house in Cambridge. We wake up every morning wrapped around each other, still amazed that we get to do this, still grateful for every day. We take nothing for granted, not after everything we've been through. My relationship with my children continues to heal. Emma got married last spring, and I was there, standing next to her as she promised forever to someone she loves. Marcus and his wife just told us they're expecting a baby, my first grandchild, and I get to be part of that journey. Things with them aren't perfect, probably never will be. There's still hurt there, still questions about my choices and their consequences, but there's also love and forgiveness and a willingness to move forward together. The cancer is in remission, has been for over a year now. I go for regular checkups, live with the knowledge that it could come back, but I refuse to let fear rule my life. I've spent too many years being afraid, being small, living a half-life. Now I'm determined to really live, to squeeze every drop of joy out of however much time I have left. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd never met David. If I'd stayed in my dead marriage, gone through the motions, been the respectable society wife until I died inside completely. Would that have been better? Would I have hurt fewer people? Maybe. Probably. But I also wouldn't have known what it felt like to be truly loved, to be cherished and valued and seen, to wake up every morning excited about the day ahead instead of dreading it. And I think in the end that matters. Not just for me, but for everyone around me. My children are seeing that it's never too late to choose happiness, that staying in a bad situation out of obligation or fear helps no one. I'm not going to pretend I'm a hero in this story. I'm not. I cheated on my husband, I broke my marriage vows, I hurt people I love. Those are facts, and they're facts I have to live with every single day. But I also know that Richard and I were destroying each other slowly in that marriage. Maybe the way I ended it was wrong. Maybe I should have had the courage to leave before I met David. But I didn't, and I can't change that now. All I can do is try to be better going forward, to be honest and kind and present in all my relationships, and to love David with everything I have, because he deserves that and so do I. The truth is, life is complicated. Relationships are complicated. People are complicated. We make mistakes. We hurt each other. We let each other down. But we also have the capacity for growth and change and forgiveness. My story doesn't have a neat, tidy ending. It has me at 64, married to a man I love desperately, trying to rebuild relationships with my children, living with the knowledge that I hurt people to get here. But I'm happy. For the first time in longer than I can remember, I'm genuinely happy. And maybe that doesn't justify everything I did to get here, but it makes it mean something. Before I finish this, I want to thank you for listening to this whole messy confession. If my story resonated with you, if you've ever felt trapped or invisible or desperate for connection, please hit that subscribe button one last time. Help this channel reach 1,000 subscribers. These stories, these honest, complicated, real stories about the choices we make and the lives we lead, they matter. Your support matters. Please subscribe. Looking back now, standing in David's kitchen making breakfast, while he reads the newspaper and comments on articles, and reaches over to squeeze my hand for no reason, except that he wants to touch me. I think about that night at the charity gala. How lost I felt. How hopeless. How I thought my life was essentially over, that I'd missed my chance at real happiness. And then David asked me to dance, and everything changed. Was it worth it? The pain, the guilt, the hurt I caused? I don't know if I have the right to say yes to that question. The people I hurt might have a different answer. But I know that I would do it again, make the same choices, because the alternative was dying slowly in a life that had stopped feeling like mine. If you're reading this, and you're in a situation where you feel trapped, where you've forgotten what it's like to feel alive, I'm not going to tell you to blow up your life like I did. That's not advice I'm qualified to give, and the consequences are real and painful. But I will tell you this. You deserve to be happy. You deserve to be with someone who sees you, really sees you, and chooses you every single day. You deserve to wake up excited about your life instead of dreading it. And sometimes, getting to that place requires hard choices and difficult conversations, and causing pain in the short term to prevent worse pain in the long term. Only you can decide if and when that's necessary. Only you can weigh the costs and benefits and make the choice that's right for you. For me, at 64 years old, with silver hair and scars from surgery and a past that's complicated and messy and full of mistakes, I can say that I'm happy. Really, truly happy. David just called from the other room, asking if I want to go for a walk along the river. The sun is shining. It's a beautiful Boston autumn day, and I'm alive and loved, and I get to spend this day with a man who makes every single moment better. So yes, I'm going to go for that walk. I'm going to hold his hand and laugh at his jokes and be grateful for every single second of this unexpected, hard-won happiness. And I'm going to try, every day, to be worthy of the second chance I've been given. That's all any of us can do, right? Make our choices, live with the consequences, and try to do better tomorrow than we did today. That's my story. Complicated, imperfect, painful, but ultimately filled with more love than I ever thought possible. Thank you for listening. My relationship with my children continues to heal. Emma got married last spring, and I was there, standing next to her, as she promised forever to someone she loves. Marcus and his wife just told us they're expecting a baby, my first grandchild, and I get to be part of that journey. Things with them aren't perfect, probably never will be. There's still hurt there, still questions about my choices and their consequences, but there's also love and forgiveness, and a willingness to move forward together. The cancer is in remission, has been for over a year now. I go for regular checkups, live with the knowledge that it could come back. But I refuse to let fear rule my life. I've spent too many years being afraid, being small, living a half-life. Now I'm determined to really live, to squeeze every drop of joy out of however much time I have left. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd never met David. If I'd stayed in my dead marriage, gone through the motions, been the respectable society wife until I died inside completely. Would that have been better? Would I have hurt fewer people? Maybe. Probably. But I also wouldn't have known what it felt like to be truly loved, to be cherished and valued and seen, to wake up every morning excited about the day ahead instead of dreading it. And I think, in the end, that matters. Not just for me, but for everyone around me. My children are seeing that it's never too late to choose happiness, that staying in a bad situation out of obligation or fear helps no one. I'm not going to pretend I'm a hero in this story. I'm not. I cheated on my husband, I broke my marriage vows, I hurt people I love. Those are facts, and they're facts I have to live with every single day. But I also know that Richard and I were destroying each other slowly in that marriage. Maybe the way I ended it was wrong. Maybe I should have had the courage to leave before I met David. But I didn't, and I can't change that now. All I can do is try to be better going forward, to be honest and kind and present in all my relationships, and to love David with everything I have, because he deserves that and so do I. The truth is, life is complicated. Relationships are complicated. People are complicated. We make mistakes. We hurt each other. We let each other down. But we also have the capacity for growth and change and forgiveness. My story doesn't have a neat, tidy ending. It has me at 64, married to a man I love desperately, trying to rebuild relationships with my children, living with the knowledge that I hurt people to get here. But I'm happy. For the first time in longer than I can remember, I'm genuinely happy. And maybe that doesn't justify everything I did to get here, but it makes it mean something. Before I finish this, I want to thank you for listening to this whole messy confession. If my story resonated with you, if you've ever felt trapped or invisible or desperate for connection, please hit that subscribe button one last time. Help this channel reach 1,000 subscribers. These stories, these honest, complicated, real stories about the choices we make and the lives we lead, they matter. Your support matters. Please subscribe. Looking back now, standing in David's kitchen making breakfast, while he reads the newspaper and comments on articles, and reaches over to squeeze my hand for no reason, except that he wants to touch me. I think about that night at the charity gala. How lost I felt. How hopeless. How I thought my life was essentially over, that I'd missed my chance at real happiness. And then David asked me to dance, and everything changed. Was it worth it? The pain, the guilt, the hurt I caused? I don't know if I have the right to say yes to that question. The people I hurt might have a different answer. But I know that I would do it again, make the same choices, because the alternative was dying slowly in a life that had stopped feeling like mine. If you're reading this, and you're in a situation where you feel trapped, where you've forgotten what it's like to feel alive, I'm not going to tell you to blow up your life like I did. That's not advice I'm qualified to give, and the consequences are real and painful. But I will tell you this. You deserve to be happy. You deserve to be with someone who sees you, really sees you, and chooses you every single day. You deserve to wake up excited about your life instead of dreading it. And sometimes, getting to that place requires hard choices and difficult conversations, and causing pain in the short term to prevent worse pain in the long term. Only you can decide if and when that's necessary. Only you can weigh the costs and benefits and make the choice that's right for you. For me, at 64 years old, with silver hair and scars from surgery and a past that's complicated and messy and full of mistakes, I can say that I'm happy. Really, truly happy. David just called from the other room, asking if I want to go for a walk along the river. The sun is shining. It's a beautiful Boston autumn day, and I'm alive and loved, and I get to spend this day with a man who makes every single moment better. So yes, I'm going to go for that walk. I'm going to hold his hand and laugh at his jokes and be grateful for every single second of this unexpected, hard-won happiness. And I'm going to try, every day, to be worthy of the second chance I've been given. That's all any of us can do, right? Make our choices, live with the consequences, and try to do better tomorrow than we did today. That's my story. Complicated, imperfect, painful, but ultimately filled with more love than I ever thought possible. Thank you for listening.